Hello. I've been inspired to make a short Kratom video. I might make other ones to follow up on this, but my biggest inspiration is I'm a 64-year-old man who, for the last 2 years, has been using Kratom to fight my osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis, at least for me, causes me pain all down from my shoulder, radiates down my arm and in my limbs and everything. And I I tried pharmaceuticals, and pharmaceuticals were, annoying, had weird side effects. You had I remember one, Celebrex, Vioxx, Nebumetone, however you say that one. I remember one time saying to a doctor after taking 1,000 milligrams a day, saying, hey, I don't know if it's really working, and I don't like that I get constipated or some of these other side effects. And the doctor, who was an arthritis specialist, said, you know what, maybe you should take 2,000 milligrams a day. You know, and that's the pharmaceutical way. I'm not against pharmaceuticals in a lot of things in life. I know people with seizure medications and other medications, and it's wonderful for in those reasons. But I think the lobbyists now for the pharmaceutical companies are lobbying against kratom because they want it for themselves. They, there's one, you know, I don't have it at hand, but I know there's one factual um, report where one of the pharmaceutical companies already has patented a combination of the kratom chemical composites with acetaminophen or ibuprofen, one of those, because someday they want to sell it as an over-the-counter painkiller. Well, I'm here to tell you that all you need is the powdered leaf. Um, I would buy packets of it, um, and I only buy it from a legitimate importer. I wouldn't recommend anybody ever really buy it from a gas station or a bodega. Those are um, not the most trustworthy places to buy kratom. But here's my quick kratom story. Um, After all these pharmaceuticals, well, a couple of years ago, I didn't even want to go to work. If I played my guitar for an hour, my shoulder would be hurting me, and it would hurt me for a couple of days. If I did yard work, my my whole body would be sore for days from clipping hedges, mowing lawns, and everything. So about 2 years ago, a friend of mine online, I was saying how I had all these aches and pains, and I was starting to learn about natural medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and turmeric for inflammation, and different things that might help me. And he said, "Oh, my," and I was researching kratom, and I'd mentioned that, and he says, "Oh, my brother-in-law, he sells kratom, and he's very, I've learned this since even more, but my good friend told me how reliable he was and how he imported it and it was tested, excuse me, and how it was, pure leaf kratom. Kratom, the basic thing is it's a leaf that grows in Indonesia that has opioid qualities. And I think Hamilton Morris, or one of the guys that I kind of trust, says, yes, technically it's an opioid and everything. But what they do is they dry out the leaf. You take a little bit of what I do. Some people might have more or less, but you take maybe a teaspoon or two. I put it in my orange juice, and I would go to work. I'd have a teaspoon or two in with my orange juice, and I'd sip this as I go to work. Now, the annoying thing, again, my inspiration for this, is that pharmaceutical companies, now when I go on Google, because I'm going to look up the Yankee information or something like that, I get all these boxes that say how many people have died from kratom and everything. And I'm pretty much easy to tell. Let me rephrase that. It's pretty easy for me to say that I doubt highly that anyone has ever died from kratom that at least has half a brain in their head. Meaning, I've taken kratom for 2 years. I have no side effects. I have no withdrawal. I don't take it on the weekends or for days at a time because I don't need it because I'm not feeling sore or anything. But I pretty much take it 3 or 4 times a week in my juice, and not even all day, half a day. But there are people in this world that are, dare I say, idiots. It's kind of like I don't drink coffee, and I think coffee and kratom actually are in a somewhat similar species setup. But I don't drink coffee. If someone said, "Hey, have 1 cup of coffee and they'll give you some caffeine and you can go get your work done or anything," I'd probably handle that, and everything. But if I was a dopey kid, a 20-year-old or something, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to drink 10 cups of coffee." Well, if I did that at my age, especially, I'd probably have a heart attack from an overdose of coffee and caffeine. Now, it doesn't mean that coffee's bad, and it doesn't mean that kratom's bad. It, Kratom won't get you high. If you do like I have a 1 or 2 teaspoons in my orange juice. If I put 10 teaspoons in, I'll probably end up having a headache. I'll probably want to, be nauseous at least, if not throw it up, because the effect doesn't build on itself. Um, Many people think that sometimes less is more for the effects of kratom. So me, I use a low amount anyway. So I just kind of stay with my 1 teaspoon, teaspoons. But when people are saying that people are dying from kratom, they're not dying from kratom. They're dying because they're the 35-year-old that's racked their bodies with heroin addiction, and now they're trying to get off of heroin, so they use something like kratom, or they're the person who's drank too much or did this and that. Most times, if you dig into the reports of people that they say died from kratom, you'll see other drugs and things in that person. Also, there's just people that sadly are worn down by other opioid addictions where maybe their heart's not so sound and this and that, and they do a cocktail of things, and kratom happens to be in that. So the lobbyists and the pharmaceutical companies, they jump on that aspect of it. But I think if anyone was logical and really looked upon these things, I saw one thing on Google, something like 80 people had died of kratom. Well, I'll tell you right now that if I could afford to do it, I'd bet you money that 75 of those people had other things in their system or other events going on in their lives that caused them to pass away, unfortunately. And, people make these arguments all the time about it, but you can die from anything if you overdo it or if you do it, I was going to say the wrong way, but, if you, again, if you drink too much coffee or you have, there was one woman, I remember this is a classic story that kratom people tell, but there was some woman that lost the contest, how much water could you drink in a certain amount of time, and she literally died from drinking too much water. So I want you to take all those reports with a big grain of salt, because kratom, to me, has been a godsend. It's so anyway. The big thing I want you to understand about kratom is um, it's not the perfect solution for a lot of people, and maybe some people don't take to it, but it's not the pure evil that pharmaceutical companies and lobbyists want to make it out to be. Um, the fear factor is just what it sounds like. They're trying to make you afraid of it. Um, if you do your own research, which I always recommend to any of my friends, which some of my friends are now kratom users, for a lot of my friends are my age, for their aches and pains and everything. Do your own research. If you know somebody that, knows about kratom, ask them about their experiences and everything. There are forums about kratom, and most of them, like the one I tend to use, are a bunch of nice, sweet people, male, female, young, and old, that just use kratom to feel better than the aches and pains of their conditions, whatever it might be. Um, so I'm gonna make another video after this that'll be about the different types of kratom, meaning it's all a powdered leaf, but some of the leaves have a red vein, some have a green vein, some have lighter color, yellow and everything vein. And it's just the age of the leaf. It's also where it's harvested from: Thailand, Malaysia, Borneo, all that Indonesian area. Excuse me. Um, So I'll do some more informative things about Kratom, but I really wanted to get out there and let you know that in my humble opinion, which is a classic thing to say nowadays, Kratom is not as evil as people want to make it out to be. And Kratom basically saved my active life, because otherwise I'd be sitting around with ice packs on me watching TV and not being as active as I can be. So be well.